interest today. I will tell you that within the U.S., certainly the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security have expressed a renewed interest in function points over the last year, and I would expect that to grow next year. So the Department of Defense at times has been a bit hesitant to embrace function points, but I believe that that is being quickly overcome. So I'm going to jump right into this, and let's see how to, let me go back one, sorry. So in today's world, what we really see is three key elements: dominance in space, data analytics, data science, and cybersecurity. And they all merge together around the issue of cybersecurity. And the days of thinking cybersecurity is nothing to worry about are long gone. It is a big issue. And what I'm going to talk about today really are the issues that a cost analyst faces when trying to deal with cybersecurity. So I always believe in giving you the key points up front and then walking through the briefing. So the key issues today are, number one, how big is cybersecurity? The second issue is that the two methods being used most often today are an economic model and an industrial engineering bottoms-up model. And both of those approaches have significant flaws in the area of cybersecurity. And I'm going to propose to you a hypothetical model based around the kind of a Kokomo approach that we could potentially apply to cybersecurity. And the question you should ask me is where will you get the data? And my answer will be, I sure hope ISBSG and other groups will help us in defining the data. So I start the discussion by talking about a simple example. So I've got a 100 by 100 square foot facility with in-house with cloud applications. Apex is just a general name. It's a contractor-owned, contractor-operated, developing organization, developing software and integrating it into chips for classified DoD communications project. I need to state again, this is all hypothetical. So the issues that you first embrace are, what is cybersecurity? Does it include building the secure classified information facility, SCIF? Does it include perimeter protection? Does it include remote monitoring, access control? What about control of the HVAC and the power sources, the health ventilation, heating, ventilation, air conditioning? Does it include cloud security? Does it just include networking and control and monitoring? Is there an operation and support tail? Is there a disaster recovery plan, a live recovery plan, a contingency plan? Or am I following best practices? So traditionally, we have thought about cybersecurity as just being avoiding intrusion, but I believe the concepts now are quickly being expanded to well beyond just a software thing. So just as an aside, I did some quick analysis. I think you may be familiar with RS means. It's a data source for construction cost estimating. It has particular applications you can use in commercial, overseas, or classified programs. But a SCIF, a secure classified information facility, cost about somewhere from $564 a square foot, just based on an average. A visitor control center is probably about $400 a square foot. A gatehouse is about $1,000 a square foot. Cameras and monitoring are $1,300 or to $2,000. If it's a standalone facility, you need to consider fencing and measures. If you need fencing, it'd be about $44 a linear foot. Bollards run towards $1,500, and all this comes from the PACS newsletter that gets you construction factors. Now, normally in the previous years, I would not have considered these costs as part of the cybersecurity, but if I owned Apex Corporation and was trying to bid a government contract, I'd certainly want someone to pay for these items. So that brings me to the kind of the first source is how broad is cybersecurity? And it's big. It's a huge risk. Steve Ballmer says it's just a very large and growing concern. There's multiple books out today on cybersecurity. One that I might recommend that you read is Tribe of Hackers. It's an interview with about 25 leading cybersecurity analysts across the world, not in the US, to talk about cybersecurity and what they're doing. And here are a few of the quotes from the book. The biggest myth is that we are only one technical solution away from solving the industry's problem. These are myths. Perhaps I'm just jaded by all the marketing, but I think the biggest myth is security is that risk can be reduced and security posture can be improved. It's not always the hacker in the black hoodie trying to steal your data. Sometimes it's someone trying to steal your personal information. What these people, I'll go to the next one and then summarize in general. I'd say the biggest myth about cybersecurity is that spending more money makes you more secure. The most recurring myth I encounter is that security isn't everyone's problem. And the bottom line is cybersecurity is hard and it's a marathon and it's ongoing. So if you were to look at the Tribe of Hackers, and I think all of you know what I mean by hackers, but if you read the Tribe of Hackers and you're talking with industry leaders in the area of cybersecurity, they paint a pretty bleak picture. They paint a picture that says that the hacker is always one step ahead of the cybersecurity guys. So cybersecurity is international, it's a crime, and it's something all of us face both on a personal and public and national security basis. So cybersecurity means different things to different people. It means something different to me personally. It means something different if you're a small business or a large business, or if you're in fact involved with national security. Information security performs 4 functions: protects the organization's ability to function, protecting the data and information the organization collects and uses, and enabling the safe operation of applications running on the organization's IT system, and safeguarding the organization's technical assets. It includes physical security, infrastructure, local hosts, local networks, and perimeter. And all lifecycle cost estimates should address protection, detection, and response. So at this point, I have not seen that as a pervasive look at cybersecurity costing. And I think we need to open our eyes a little bit to how broad cybersecurity is. So this is just a short little picture that shows you the correlation between attacks and users. This comes from a book on cybersecurity, Attack and Defense. I referenced it there. It's a recommended reading. It's interesting that multiple sources tell me today that information systems are now so complicated that US companies need more than 200 days on average just to detect that a breach has occurred. So I can just tell you, I regularly get notices from my credit card or from my banking institutions or places that tell me that there's been a security breach, it's interesting to think that that breach has probably been in place for 200 days and it was just discovered. The same sources indicate that on average, 75% of the attacks are external and only 25 are internal. I wonder now, as we move into this period of a pandemic and COVID-19, with more and more remote work, if we won't become more and more vulnerable to and victims of cybersecurity attacks. This is just kind of showing you the cybersecurity kill chain and who the threat and the actors are. I'll talk more about the actors in just a minute. But your security posture won't be fully complete if you don't have a good detection system. That means having the right sensors distributed across the network to monitor activities. Again, what I have normally seen is that we define some hardware and software solutions, cost those hardware and software solutions out, and then assume that we've now the implications of cybersecurity. And I think everything that I'm reading and understanding, that's just not true. So every cyber decision that a corporation or a business or a governmental agency has to make hinges on two questions. Number one, will it work? And number two, is it affordable? So I've tried to, through research, to determine who the key threat actors are. You'll find slightly different lists of people, but they're certainly criminals. They're certainly hacktivists. They're certainly criminal hackers. They're certainly competitors. If you are if you're a auto manufacturer, your competitors are looking at what you do. Certainly, there are foreign nationals who are interested in infiltrating us, and they're disgruntled employees. Now, if you believe the previous page, disgruntled employees are probably about 25% of the threat. Some threats are easier to cost than others. It's just not just about the hardware and software solution. There are many in today's world that suggest that the cost of protection is greater than the cost to develop a threat. What that means is that the hackers, the cyber intruders, are able to infiltrate you at a much lower cost than you have to expend to keep yourself vulnerable, keep yourself protected. One has said that the terrorist has to be correct only once, and the protectors have to be correct every time. And that's very much where I think we are with cyber threats. So just a real case of ransomware where a jailbreak kind of thing called WannaCry pops up on a computer. And at this point, the response team is working on 3 different fronts to break the ransomware encryption, to identify other vulnerable systems, and to communicate the issue to the press. This was a real issue just a number of years ago that popped up in many commercial businesses. So that was the first part of my talk where I hope I laid out an overview to the scope of cyber costing and the issues that a cost analyst face. What I find today is that there are basically 2 approaches, if you will. There's an economic model cost, which is really excellent for some business decisions. What that model does is say, the cost of a breach to me is X, and so I'm going to spend X plus to protect that brief. However, some benefits like life, safety, security are very different to quantify. Then there's the approach that I call bottoms up or engineering build up, which is a great way to effectively cost what you define. However, we face the classic known unknown and unknown unknowns issue. And I hope I listed a reference at the bottom there, but I think as software estimators, you're all aware with that paradox that I can cost what I know and I can plan for the things that I don't know, but there are always issues out there that are random and pop up that make my costs less than accurate. At the beginning, Pierre talked about the fact that I have been doing this for 40 years. And if I was honest with you, I would tell you that I haven't ever gotten the right answer in 40 years. I've provided information that was very useful for decision makers, but very seldom do we get the exact number right. So with that said, I want to talk about these a little bit. Cybersecurity costing includes infrastructure, people, software, hardware, IT policy, threat lifecycle management. One of the things that I think we often overlook is that policy and training of our people is critical to the cyber threat. And I think we probably have not included that in our analysis. There's also a little chart off to the right that kind of, as best I could, from this is the cost of malicious cyber activity from February of 2018 that kind of list in the US at least the types of loss of data and how hard they are and how expensive they are. So the ONS, operating and support, total cost of ownership, sustainment, I put all of those there. Each of us sometimes talk about the life cycle. But there's a life cycle threat. There's forensic data, discovery, quality, investigation, neutralization, and recovery. And much of the time we have only included in our cost estimate the upfront cost and not the operational side here. There's a Mitre attack framework for those of you that would like to really dig in deep in terms of how you do that. All of this is public, and I didn't misspell attack. That's the way Mitre, that's an acronym that the Mitre Corporation uses, ATT and CK. Advanced Tactical Techniques and Common Knowledge. And it's their way of outlining the whole threat scenario. So here's what I see today. Cyber costs are being assessed generally in two ways. A traditional work breakdown structure build up, kind of a bottoms up engineering approach. Galworth is building a database and repository of cybersecurity items. I would assume that ISBSG is beginning to try to collect data that might be relevant to this. And there are implements and solutions in SEER, although we're not quite there yet. Then there's what I call the cost risk or the net present value. And this is an economic approach that says the economic assessment of the cost per breach. What we're missing and what I'm going to end up proposing today is a parametric approach. Most of you are heavily invested in the software world. And if I was to stand here in this group and say the only way to cost software is to go out and count all the lines of code and and do the cost per lines of code, I think you would throw me out of the room. You would tell me that no, function points are a very accurate way to parametrically estimate the time and the manpower and schedule necessary to develop a software project. Today, we do not have an approach even close to that in cybersecurity. In the US, there's the military standard 881D Delta that lays out the critical components of an engineering build-up approach. They have specific places where they say this is where you find cybersecurity systems engineering, cybersecurity management, cybersecurity test and evaluation. Each of those are followed by a fairly detailed definition of what is in each of those elements. But if I look at the cost and benefit model, and when I say cost benefit model, I'm talking about either net present value or internal rate of return or return on investment. Those of you who are economists understand those terms. Each one is very valuable in multiple places. But as you can see, I'm trying to, on a straight line, saying that's the cost of the investment and the expected benefits from that, and trying to find the knee in the curve. I'm an old calculus guy. One key finding from Gordon and Loeb, whose model this represents, they say that the amount a firm should spend to protect information is generally no more than 1/3 or so, actually they say 37%, of the projected cost of a breach. That if you spend more than that number, you're actually above that level. In most cases, each dollar spent will reduce the anticipated loss by less than the dollar invested. And that's where you see the knee in the curve above at the top line. That is a fairly well documented solution analysis. I'd welcome you to go look up the Gordon and Loeb model. But if you believe that analysis, it says that the cost-benefit approach to cybersecurity might not ever get you where you want to be. So let me go back. I've talked about an engineering buildup, and I've talked about an economic value approach. And what I've said is that in the engineering buildup, I can accurately cost everything that I have defined, but I've not provided any cost for the things that I didn't define. And that's where parametrics comes in. I've said that in the economic model, while it's useful, in many cases there are benefits that are just, or losses that are just too difficult to quantify. So having said that, I thought, how would we in this community go about a conceptual parametric cyber cost analysis model? I use Kokomo. I realize I'm talking to a function point group, and this talks about lines of code, but you simply see here that this says is the effort is some function of size raised to a power. And for years, I've gotten a fairly accurate approach. And I have wondered if it wasn't possible to develop a co-CyberMo. So, and again, I apologize to any of you that are Kokomo experts or lean that direction or software experts. Again, I recognize I'm talking to basically a function point group, but I think you understand what I'm saying here is that there should be a set of metrics upon which I could build an analytic equation and estimate what I should invest in cybersecurity. So having said that, this was my first attempt to do that. I thought that, first of all, I needed to look at sectors, that national security was a business sector, that the commercial world was a business sector, and that other federal agencies would be a different sector. In the European Union and other parts of the world, there may be different sectors, but I thought if I could break this cybersecurity mystery down into major components, I could then begin to act. I think those sectors are important because my emphasis in national security is probably different than my emphasis if I'm a commercial business. Then I tried to identify who the threat actors were. And again, I stated those: nation states, competitors, criminals, hacktivists, opportunists, insiders. That set could change or grow as we do more research. Then I tried to figure what are the cyber mitigations or evaluations that go on. It's physical security, network security, education, malware introduction, removal of media, secure configurations, user privileges, monitoring, remote working. again, that list would grow. So what I have proposed, and what Dan and I have been talking about, is would it be possible to create a hypothetical, because I was trying to be cute with words, secure cyber cost model that is a sector evaluated cyber utility risk estimate. And in this approach, I would break the sectors out. I would identify the threat actors. I would assign probabilities of impact to each of those threat actors. The probability would add up to 100. Then I would assess each of those threat actors by 10 evaluations from each threat, that is physical surety, education, etc. I would come up with the low, medium, high for each of those, roll those numbers up in a relatively straightforward Excel process, and produce an output, and then distribute that output over some distribution, maybe a Weibull or something like that, that would allow me to distribute those costs over time. Now, when I first presented this concept of this model, the first thing that I was hit with is, where do you get the data? And as you in ISBSG know probably more than anyone else, collecting, updating, maintaining, and getting quality data is the key to your success. And I have to tell you right now, we're struggling to find that data, although I believe those data sets are out there and we just have not arrived at them yet. So that was my proposal into research and how we move into the cybersecurity costing world. Of course, within Gallereth, we have SEER for software, SEER for hardware, SEER for information technology, SEER for manufacturing, SEER systems, SEER for space, which is a relatively new model that we've developed that looks parametrically at the cost of space systems. And then last, hopefully at some point we would add SEER for security. So having said that, I think what I would do is go back to the presentation. Am I still there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen, or someone would take. Okay. Are there questions?
Any questions? There's no question coming up in the Q&A panel. Do we have any questions? How about you, Tom?
Well, I thank you for allowing me to present this. I realize that it's a bit off topic, but I believe it's certainly a topic of today and of interest to us. And any thoughts
before you go, how does the new cybersecurity maturity model affect costing, or do you have an opinion on that?
Oh, yes, I do. And they will string me up by my toes and hang me from a tree if I tell you the truth. But if you promise not to tell anyone, I'll answer that question.
I'm not sure I understand.
The cybersecurity maturity model is still very much to be defined. The cyber maturity model can't really be imposed on contractors until there is a DFARS, a Defense Contracting Agency rule written. That rule generally takes about a year. I suspect that that cybersecurity maturity capability will be implemented Thanksgiving, Christmas of next year, not this year, 2021. And that is going to cost that's going to cost companies a fair amount of money. There are 5 levels. It would appear, many of you probably remember when we went into the CMMI process, and we found that if you couldn't get certified at about level 3, it was difficult to do business. I think that level 3 or level 4 is going to be required in the CMMC world. And that's going to be a fairly expensive process for a lot of companies unless you were already heavily invested in infrastructure and cybersecurity. Did that answer that question?
Absolutely. We also have another question from Bonnie Brown. Are there aspects of cybersecurity that can be estimated in one of the SEER products?
Well, yes, SEER for information SEER for information technology specifically is designed to do that. And again, I have to be, but it depends on you being able to identify what the security setup is. So it is within the SEER products right now, it's much more engineering buildup than parametric.
I have a question myself. You were talking about the cost of an attack or cyber attack and so on, and versus how much you would like to spend to prevent that. But have you done an analysis of the cost for a company? Because if you, as you said about reputation and a lot of those things that could occur due to security attack.
Yes, I have, and I can't quote that off the top of my head, but let me just jump back to one slide I had in the presentation. There is a brand new issue of the cost of malicious cyber activity to the U.S. economy. I referenced the February 2018 version. I believe they have just published the cost of malicious cyber activity for the 2020 version, and that has a lot of information there in terms of cost per attack, and that is one of the places where I'm trying to get data that might be meaningful. Needless to say, it is very diverse over segments, and at this moment is very highly aggregated.
Okay. Was there one more question coming up here?
Yeah, Christophe Hubert. Oh, Christophe. Can we use function points to size the security requirements and then ISBSG data to get the cost?
I believe the answer is yes. And that's one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you today. I don't think you've done that yet, but I believe you could do that. Again, the problem, I feel kind of like Galileo saying the world is round or whatever when everyone else said the world is flat. Those data are there. We just need to figure out how to manage them and pull them together, because no one's done that yet.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Bob, for a very exciting and interesting presentation. It's I think it's a very hot topic, and it will be hotter and hotter year by year here.
I think so. I believe that is one of the 3, at least in the U.S., space dominance, understanding big data, and getting our hands around cybersecurity, I believe are the 3 issues that will dominate us for years to come.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.